Hi, I'm Paul Stringfellow, and welcome to another edition of CTO Insights. On this week's show, I'm joined by a guest that some of you who watch our Tech Takeaways podcast might have seen on a couple of recent episodes. But during those episodes, he covered loads of interesting stuff about his development in his career as a CTO, some of the things that he's learned in doing that, and some of the things he does when it comes to evaluating and buying technology, understanding business needs. And he covered so much really interesting stuff in that. What I wanted to do is maybe just have a little bit of a longer chat with him today about how his CTO role has developed, and what he sees as the things that he's responsible for and wants to do going forward. So to do that, I'm joined by David Price. Hi, David.
Bill, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me back on. Good to see everyone again.
Yeah, it's nice to have you back, and nice to have you back in a week where you've taken on a big challenge in the last week, and I thought it was unfair that we didn't start there, because if you're going to run that far, I think we need to talk about it. Some people will know what you was doing off the podcast, but just a London Marathon. Yeah,
London Marathon completed, done, dusted. Sunday, 26 miles, 26.2. Actually, near 27 I did, because somehow Garmin wasn't really working properly. But there we go. Really great experience, to be fair. It was the unknown going into it. I didn't know what quite to expect, but it was up there with probably one. It was not the best things I've done, to be fair. Memories made on the day to last a lifetime, to be fair. So something I'll never forget.
And did a rock solid time as well.
Yeah, 3 hours 44 minutes. So yeah, when I started the journey, pre-Christmas, and really got into that training phase, it was about completing it. Then you start to get a bit excited and get it. Let's go under 4 hours, and so to get 3 hours 44 was unbelievable time, and I'm super happy with that. So
yeah. And you were saying before we recorded about how you were excited and ready to go, as opposed to the trepidation some might have felt, thinking, what on earth have I signed up for? Why am I here?
Yeah, no, obviously, looking at the training plan, and it was 2.5, 3 week taper period where your mileage comes right down, to be fair, and I found that quite difficult, if I'm being honest, which again feels strange saying it. Mileage came down, and it was just trying to let the body and legs get ready for the race, and so I was like a cold spring, ready to go on, in the lead up to it, and the days before. So I was certainly ready when it came, and the challenge always was not to set off too quick. The first couple of miles in the London Marathon is actually slightly downhill, so you can. I think I was telling myself several times to slow down, and
you wasn't one of them who tried to compete with the elite athletes right at the beginning. First 100 metres, I'm going to be in front.
No, I don't think so. I probably would have pulled the hammy, and it would have been a very long run then. But no.
And you raised a lot of money for charity as well. What was the charity you supported?
MS Society. So the great support me throughout the training. They had a little celebration at the end. Again, as you walked in at the end, it was a big round of applause, and everyone stands up, and it was special moments with the wife and kids coming to say hello and well done. So 4,300 I think I'm on at the moment. So absolutely unbelievable target.
Brilliant.
More than doubled what any expectations that I had. So again, anyone who's listening, who's supported, who's sponsored me on the way, thank you very much. That's really, really appreciated.
Well, we'll let's put the link in show notes again for this show, and then if people want to go, that's 26 miles. That's somebody deserves to give that fella some money. Then feel free to do so. So let's jump into our topic, David. So why don't we start with, apart from marathon runner, and we really should have got you to bring your medal, but apart from marathon runner, tell us a little bit about kind of who you are and the career so far, and the position you're in today.
Yeah, so currently IT director for a local engineering firm based in Liverpool, head office in Liverpool, 14 offices up and down the country, 450 staff to date. We're in the construction space, in the construction sector, and I've tended to stick and being within that space for near 20 years now, to be fair. So I had a number of different roles there, and probably almost from the day-to-day operational side, service desk elements, up to leadership, IT management, and then moving on into my current role today. So hands in many pies, different roles and responsibilities, and again working with different types of people as well.
And do you think, have you found that kind of, because you've done hands-on IT roles, I know when I first met you, it was kind of not an IT support role, but very much a hands-on IT role. Has that helped you, do you think, in terms of understanding kind of what an IT director leadership role needs I suppose, needs to be successful at it?
Yeah, for me, 100%. Yeah, it's certainly helped me and helped the way I think. I still think it does help me today. Going back into again some of the frustrations that my IT team might have at times, and putting that cap on to think, is that a sensible approach? Yeah. But also being able to sit there and take the views of the end users as well, and what that means, and are we operating in the best way we can or not? So yeah, being able to, at times, can still get my hands dirty once in a while, and I think that goes a long way with the team at times. Hopefully, if you're just watching, but no, also you can speak to those end users and really understand what they mean. For the, I was going to say frustrations, but for the opportunities really. So when they're trying to understand and speak to me about what they're trying to do and how we're trying to make things better, I can really go back into what that means, and from a delivery perspective from us as well.
Yeah, so if your team are watching, it's not all just podcasting and marathon running. There's hands-on stuff goes with this as well. And I suppose actually for people who are developing into leadership roles and who maybe want to be CTOs, they don't have to be able to run marathons as well, do they?
Well, it might help, but no, you certainly don't. But also, I would argue you don't necessarily have to be hands-on as well at the same time to follow that through. It's it might be a slight benefit. It might be a benefit if you don't run marathons. You might be more concentrating and have better legs and work. But yeah, no, it's all part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point you make actually about because I meet people in IT leadership roles who have both come from an IT background and come from a non-IT background. So maybe they've always been in a management or a strategy role, or maybe even come from, I've met people who've come from very different disciplines who have ended up in IT leadership roles. And I don't think ultimately it matters hugely. You've got into that role because you've got the skills to get into that role. But, I always find it interesting that people who've kind of worked their way through kind of the IT, from the IT fixing printers and desktops at one end through to, building strategy, et cetera, at the other. I think it's always an interesting shift. So if we have a look at the role that you've got today, so maybe just to add some context to that. Yep. So what kind of are your areas of responsibility? What are you asked to do? What are the demands on your role now?
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting role, really, a varied role, a wide role. It might be IT director on paper, but it's certain responsibility for a number of areas. So, I think I might have mentioned previously, but I do sit here on different days and different times within a day doing different things, and that might be from a core operational side of stuff and supporting the business operationally, whether that's looking at our cyber strategy or what we're doing around cyber, and again, is that day-to-day cyber, or is that the long-term projection of what's going on within the sector, within the space, but again, also where are we financially, within that day-to-day budget realm, or that longer picture on the bigger bits of infrastructure that we might only renew every 3 or 5 years, or that might be a monthly budget now. It's more within the cloud or what that is. So, but also being able to speak to users and senior people within the business, and being able to understand where those opportunities may lie, and does that align with what the business wants and needs? I think that's one to be wary of all the time. Users, senior people within the business always want maybe something slightly different to where the business wants you to go as well. So it's understanding you might have multiple jobs within your job role, but you're employed to do a particular job, and that comes first. Yeah. And that's having that understanding and that prioritization of your time within a given day or week, is really, really powerful as well.
And how do you? I think that's a really good point actually about prioritizing weeks. So how do you go about prioritizing that? And I'm sure it's different every week, but how do you? What's the best way that you kind of decide how you prioritize your time?
I think what partly around that is a team focus. So making sure that you've got that right team around you to be able to deliver some of this stuff. I couldn't do everything on my own. Yeah. Although we might all like to think you can do it at times, it's never an option, never possible. So you need the right team around you to do that. So developing that team, putting putting the right projects with them, and then encouraging them to take flight themselves, and you almost just being that support mechanism to them to know that you're there if they need you, or at times, as I say, you might need to jump in and give them a bit of guidance, a bit of hands-on help, advice, or whatever it may be. But then that gives me that frees up my time to go and do all the stuff that I can go and concentrate on. So it's a little bit like that spinning plate sort of angle, isn't it? So you go over and spin this plate for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So that releases you on the other side to go and spend an hour to do something else.
Where the running comes in.
yeah, maybe it is then. Yeah.
So, but I think that's a really interesting point. And actually, one of the things you just said in there, I think particularly for people who've had a technical background who go into senior roles, that letting go thing is hard. How hard did you find that? And is there any tips for anybody who's kind of developing into those roles about how they can learn to let go of getting their hands dirty, getting involved? I know sometimes you have to, but if that's all you ever did, then you don't get to do any of the kind of leadership stuff.
Yeah, no, 100. It's one of the hardest, I'd say. And it's while they might have put it on the shelf or moved it away from time to time, it's easy to fall off that shelf and get back into it. And again, that's looking at who you've got, what they do, and what they're responsible for, and having the confidence in your team to be able to go and do that.
Yeah.
It's almost like being a parent at times. The helicopter parents, and you've got to accept that sometimes people will fall over and get things wrong, and it's then supporting them so they understand what went wrong or what could have been done better.
Did you have to fight the urge to not just say, "Oh, let me do that. Go on, just give it to me"?
100%. Yeah. It's dead easy to say, "I'll just do that," but at times it's you've got to say no. Go and ask someone else to do it. That's why they're within your team, within your business, or whatever it may be, and just say, please, it's nice to say, please, can you go and do that for me? And what you'll find, actually, 9 times out of 10, people will gladly take it off you and go and do it. So, sometimes that's a personal thing. Just go and ask. Either that's go and ask for the help, ask for the support, or go and give it to someone who's getting paid to go and do that role. Yeah,
and I think there's a real, I don't know if value is quite the right word, but I think there's a real kind of, hard to measure pride, I guess maybe is the word I'm looking for, in seeing people who you've seen develop in their career suddenly take on these kind of ever more impressive leadership positions themselves, and that only comes about if you give them that little bit of guidance and then help them, help them where they need to, but actually let them go and develop it.
Yeah, I think what it does is it is nice to see people come on and progress with personally and within their own development, and that I think that's a big one. I instill on my team all the time is that, look, we're here to support you, and I'm actually trying to make you better.
Yeah.
Hopefully not that much better, so you take my job. But again, I think that's the thing. They step up, you take more stuff off you, but it doesn't mean you got less and less for you. Your role expands and there's more and more for you to ever look at. Whether that is within the IT field, whether that's within the wider business, or again, is it just gives you that bit more of a headspace to take a step back and say, have that review, are we doing the right thing, and have that sanity check. So
and that brings me on to an interesting point, because I know when we did the Tech Takeaways podcasts, and you can find them in the Tech Takeaways, home of Tech Takeaways podcasts, when, if you don't know where to look for them now, I don't know what to do for you. But on those shows, one of the things you talked about that I thought was really interesting, and I think it's a hugely important part of an IT leadership role, was the importance of communication. You've talked about kind of communication with your team and occasionally with end users, but also communication with a broader business. And you gave some really good tips on how you've developed those kind of communications channels. So do you want to, for this audience, do you want to share a little bit about kind of, one, how important that is, and then two, some of the mechanisms you've put in place to help drive kind of business to IT communication?
Yeah, I think one of the first ones really to talk around there will be for the business and users to understand who you are as an individual. So to be able to put a face to that name, so they recognise that Dave Price is that IT director, and that is the role that he's committing to do within the business. So if that's just so they're aware of you, or if that's so when you go and visit the office or a different office that you're not necessarily based in, so as you walk in, there's Dave Price, the IT director, and then it almost removes that.
Are they always that positive when you come in? Yeah.
Well, I don't think they give me a standing ovation at times, but no, it's certainly. I think I'd like to hope, and I think I do have that. The words and ears of people and users within the business. I do have an open, not that I have an office or a door, but I do have an open door policy that I can speak to anyone and everyone, regardless what role you are, what seniority you are, and actually, everyone within the business has got a valid and good opinion, and leaning on those users at times and different people in the business, makes me and makes the IT function better within the business.
Yeah, and I think that kind of whole, that's really interesting, that kind of open door piece, because, I think with a lot of IT projects, and we'll talk in a minute about kind of cybersecurity, because I think this is particularly important with cyber, in that having that kind of buy-in, having that kind of acceptance and understanding of IT aren't the team that sit there and just say no all the time. IT are there to enable the business, enable you to do your job better. Yeah. And when we, because you talked about kind of that communication across the business, how do you make sure that you have a voice with kind of the business leadership, or at least, you've got some input or they've got some input into you, how do you effectively drive that?
Yeah, just make answer a different question before I jump onto that, if you don't mind, Paul. One thing you mentioned there, when IT is the department that doesn't say no, we're also guilty at times of saying yes too often. Yeah. I'd say as well. Which I don't think we ever talk about that as much. So I'm guilty, and I've been guilty, and we have been guilty in the past of saying yes too often, because we just like to be good guys and good people and be enablers for the business. And sometimes what we think in our mind is the best thing since sliced bread actually isn't. Or when you think, we're just going to install this, or now we're in this digital age and digital world, and efforts about apps and functions, and I'll just roll that app out and people just they know how to use it. It'll be dead easy, download it or whatever. It'll go down really well. That's not always the case. And we found that recently in some stuff that we're doing internally. But again, doing small trials within that, almost testing that bed, testing that water. Is that acceptable? Is that okay? Is the way to go? Get that feedback there before you just instantly press the button to say, bang, it's out to everyone within the business. So.
And I think it can be really easy, and maybe this is something, because like my background's technical. Obviously, we've known each other for quite a while, and I have a technical background for good, bad, or indifferent as it is. Yeah. But that idea of, as techies, we can often get carried away with the technology, 100%, and the thing that we, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And sometimes I think you're absolutely right, and that we can be guilty of deploying technology because, from a technology point of view, it's a good solution. But actually, from a business point of view, there maybe isn't necessarily either the business case or the business kind of, I mentioned buy-in before, the business buy-in as to why we should be looking to do that. Which is why I asked the question actually about that kind of strategic conversation with the leadership. Yeah. So maybe actually bringing those two things together. So how important is it that you have open communication as best you can with the leadership of the business, so that they understand what you're trying to do, and that you understand kind of their business requirements and how you best tie IT into that? Yeah,
again, that's about taking them on a journey, I think, at times as well. Let's face it, that not every board is as technical as you or I, and you might actually be the only technical person who's sitting at that board. So again, it's being able to communicate and speak to all levels of that senior team and sit around that board table, so they understand what it is you're actually meaning, what you're talking about. If it's a particular subject matter, then you might need to have to break that down into even more simple, straightforward language as such. And then go back to that. It's that easy to go back into what's the business case, what's the total cost of ownership, what's the all these words and abbreviations that we're all guilty of using within IT at times.
Of course, wouldn't be IT if we weren't.
Exactly. And just getting back to the basics. What are we trying to do? And I think the big thing for me and what we try to focus on is, are we making the employee's experience better? Because I think if you find 99 times out of 100, you're making their lives easier, better, you're making them more content and happy with what they do from an IT point in perspective, well, everyone's going to be happy. The board are going to be happy. And then, you've just got the finance director to keep on board as well at that point. But again, having that close relationship with your finance director is invaluable, and certainly that's something I've learned throughout my journey. Having the ear of the finance director, so he understands, the here and now potential issues or forecasts, but also that the longer term strategy, where those lumps and bumps within finances will come and go, whether that's from a capex cost or an operational cost, certainly makes the conversation nice and easy.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, actually having that relationship and having that constant dialogue, so that you're not turning up once a year with a list of demands and a big sticker price shock for them. So it sounds like you've got great kind of communications channels across the business, both across the user base and across the leadership base. Yeah. It's looking back now over the time you've developed that. Is there anything that maybe for somebody who's struggling with that or trying to find new ways of developing those kind of communications channels in their organization? Is there any tips that you could give them, things that you've learned and said, actually, if only I'd known this 5 years ago?
Yeah. Do you know one thing I'd say is ask for feedback all the time. From whoever that may be, and whether that's within a project environment, you might have rolled out a project if you're hands-on today. Once your project's out there, go and ask for feedback. And that might necessarily not be the feedback from a technology perspective. That might be feedback from the way you've implemented and rolled it out, or given that training or guidance about whatever it is. Just go and ask for that feedback. You learn a lot within that given moment, and if any frustrations or issues that might have come out, you can quickly address there and then, but also you can pull it to bed so it doesn't happen again next time. So, and you'll be surprised a lot of the time you ask for feedback, you do get positive feedback as well. And I can actually,
well, you might, not me.
Some of us may do at times, but again, because it might make a bit of a chuckle here, but we don't get much positive feedback on IT, do we? I think at times it can be one of those where people will always remember the last time that the server went down or the internet went off, but for the last 300 days, guys, it's been fine. So get off our case a bit. So yeah, take those moments. I think that's something that I said to myself after Sunday is, take this moment as one of those opportunities to be proud of yourself and say, things are going well. We've done that right. Enjoy that, because they're few and far between.
I always think IT are like a good referee. I mean, I probably don't remember what a good referee looks like, but actually you don't notice them until you notice them, and IT can be very much like that. But I think it's, what you just said is really important, because IT probably, if IT is a department you never see until something goes wrong, then that's almost kind of the experience, that's the communication you get. But actually that thing about constantly being engaged, you talked before about how can we make the end user experience better? How can we make the business experience better? You're always being open to that and looking at taking that feedback and taking it seriously, I guess, not just going, oh yeah, I've heard you, and then throw it in the bin.
Oh, no,
that kind of.
Oh, that can work in the other way. Certainly if you're engaging with people and there's a problem or a solution or there's something that needs fixing. Again, it's acceptable to say, I'm not sure, but I'll get back to you. But make sure you get back to people. There's nothing worse than saying I'll get back to someone and then you never do, because they'll never forget that, to be fair, and you'll never get that interaction again. So yeah, be big about it, accept that we don't know everything. I don't know everything. Pretty sure Paul doesn't know everything, even though he might not know how to accept it. So yeah, we don't know everything, but we certainly know the right people to speak to or go and get that information from. And I think that's again where you succeed within a senior position within businesses, that you won't know it all, but you'll know who to go and speak to, and that's really valuable in itself.
So moving on a little bit then. So let's have a look at kind of what you're in tray right now. So what are the being as specific as you can be, I guess. So share what you can. But what are the kind of broad challenges that you're seeing now in your role? And obviously, you talk to other people in roles similar to yours. What are the big challenges you're seeing now across the business, and how are you looking to kind of take them on and find ways to address them?
Yeah, I guess a big one at the moment that we're really focused on is around automation and efficiencies that we can bring within the business. I don't want to necessarily jump straight down into the rabbit hole of AI, but that it comes back within a sort of same sort of spectrum. So we're all everyone within businesses having to work a little bit harder now for the same fees or less. So we're trying to make sure that our staff have as efficient as of what they can do, whether that's within the software, whether that's within the technology stack that they're using, or the hardware as well at the same time. So yeah, that's the big one at the moment. And again, some of those mundane tasks that we've got to do within business. So, as you grow and get bigger within business, you do have to follow more and more, whether that's health and safety or quality or risk or whatever it may be. And then inevitably these business processes come with forms or all these policies and procedures you've got to have in play, coming with forms and checks to make sure that you're doing things in the right way. Traditionally a lot of these would have been paper based, and again, obviously, I'm sure a lot of people here will have been on that paperless office journey, which I think we all agree will never be here. But I don't think it will.
It's at least 25 years of trying to do it. So yeah,
well, exactly.
Not here yet.
So all those forms are of them being put into Word and then put into SharePoint, and then suddenly everyone says that's digitized. I don't know. For me, that's not quite digitized. It's a little bit, but not within that digital space. So, how do you then make that better again? Is there more efficiencies we can do within that? So, I know within our business, there's 80 quality procedural forms we do within the life cycle of a project, and the first 10 questions on that form may be the project name, number, project leader, client, and we asking someone to fill that same details in 70 times, or can we just take that from our database of client information, struck that straight into 70 forms? Again, whether that's RPA elements and doing it within that, or whether that's part of the Power Platform within 365, to get a separate developer. And I think that, again, this is the challenge we've got within my role and within businesses. There's several ways to do all this stuff. And every one of them has a different price point, whether it's, say, from 365 where you're paying for your license already, so just use the stuff you've paid for already. Whether you go to an external consultant, say, well, we'll pay a nice salary on a daily basis to come in and do it for us, or you do a bit of both, or you go to trusted partners like yourself and say, come on guys, come on this journey with us as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you talked about automation, you talked about AI. We couldn't be on an IT podcast and not. I think we're contractually obliged to talk about AI these days, that and cybersecurity. But it's interesting because when you start getting into things like automation and AI, one of the concerns that comes back is you try and take jobs. You're trying to because you talked about kind of that thing about efficiency. Have you heard any of that kind of feedback, or is there anything that you've done to help quell any kind of fears in that space? Because like you said, this is about efficiency, removing, because margins are getting tighter all the time. You've been asked to do more for less as you're not necessarily asking your employees to do that, but you as a business getting asked to do that. So is there any way you've been able to kind of quell any of those kind of fears?
Yeah, you're 100% right. We hear that and I see that all the time. People are worried and concerned about jobs and what does that mean. And sometimes that's where they will get that wall up. And again, you've got to get through that barrier time to really get into where these opportunities potentially lie. I think we go back to probably only like the 1960s, and you think, hold on, probably 60% of jobs today didn't exist in the 1960s. So, as digital and computer came in during those years, jobs change and you've got to move on. I think we're quite open within our business and say that anything we do to take away from your job role, and whether that's through efficiencies or technology or whatever it may be, doesn't mean that suddenly you'll be having the P45 on the printer come out if your printer works. But very much so that actually your job role will just change and develop. There's always work to do within, not only within our business, but within every business that isn't necessarily being done today. For right or wrong, and also job change will change. We're seeing data, grow and grow and grow within our business, and we've got 2 trains of thought at the moment, and some of that is, let's collect this data and keep hold of it because we know it's going to be useful in 6 to 12 months and it's going to come. We don't quite know what to do with it yet, but we know it's right to do it. And then we've got the other side of it where we've got access to this data and we're starting to use it because it's powerful information and it's making us better as a business going forward. So there's roles within data and that automation piece that certainly isn't a role today within our business, but I can see that coming.
Yeah, and I think actually I think some really good points in there as well. Realizing because this is a little bit we talked a lot earlier on, didn't we, about that ability to let go of the day to day so you can do some of the more strategic stuff. And a lot of the things that we're meeting are really challenging, aren't they? That kind of whole piece around data. I'm just doing some work in the kind of data loss prevention space. Right. And some of the way I've seen that space evolve even over the last 4 and 5 years. Because there's the way that we as organizations have changed. So our IT infrastructure has changed hugely. The way we work has changed hugely. But of course, new threats. We've got evolving cyber threat constantly. But we've talked about AI in there. That actually the introduction of things like ChatGPT and Copilot and Google Gemini. These kind of things where people can take your information and pop it in these things. Not for malicious purposes, but tell me something about this information with no idea where that information's then going. And then the other side of that is, as you just said, you've got this kind of whole thing about, well, we've got this data here. We might have some kind of learning model that might need to look at it. But, so I suppose that whole thing about, is there a way that you in your position today, is there a way that you manage to keep on top of a lot of these changes so you can see not only how your role needs to evolve, but actually how your teams need to evolve as well?
Yeah, it's a very good question, that, Paul, to be fair, because I don't think there's one answer that fits it all, to be fair. From my perspective, it's about speaking to other people within other similar positions with not necessarily just within the construction sectors, but within all sectors, within all spaces. What are you guys doing? What's your challenges? What's your risk? What's your opportunities? And actually, I was over in Manchester earlier this week. We speaking to people, and different sectors, different roles, but very much the same problems, or very much the same attitude, and whether that's we start to look at the risk elements of what AI is, whether we start to talk about the ethics and stuff around that, but I'm talking the same language as what you're talking and everyone else. So again, I think it's it's not feeling as though you're on this silo on your own trying to recreate the world as such, but speaking to others. But again, I'd also impression that the whole, and I call it the consumerization of IT, but how this AI has jumped over IT and gone straight into the laps of our end users. Again, our end users are quite clever people as well. So engage with them. Some are a little bit techie, some are a little bit off put by tech. So, but again, with that relationship you've built with people, you get to know there's some good guys here to go and bounce ideas off, but also some guys to say, what do you think? What do you think within this space, within this area? Because again, people who are on the coalface, they don't just speak to themselves; they speak to all their colleagues, not only within our business, within other businesses, where they've been through university as well. And this conversation is going on all the time, so it just grows and grows and grows, and you just get it. It just gives you sometimes it's just the right confirmation that what you're doing and where you're operating, where you're thinking is the right thing and the right approach.
And I think in a space like AI, this is incredibly important. I think a really good analogy of how it's kind of jumped the wall into past IT and actually straight into the hands of users. But that point about because I think lots of us are, and I'm seeing a real interest, both locally, and I was over in Manchester last week talking about some of this stuff. All of us going to Manchester like it's a big day out. But we, they're having the same conversation. We're all trying to figure out where AI is going to play a part in the business. And actually our end users are probably one of those best parts of the information, because they're seeing how these tools might change their jobs for the better or make them more efficient. We're just not going to know that because we're not doing their job day to day. In the same way, I don't expect them to know how to do my job or yours. I don't know how to do theirs either. So I think it's a really interesting, and that kind of whole thing about, looking to talk to other people in similar roles as well. I think it's just a hugely important part of growing as a leader in IT.
And and communicate that with everyone. Tell people that this is what you are. We might have an AI policy, but it's not to the letter of the law. It's setting out some clear standard and some clear guidance. But again, it's quite open, to be fair, and it's completely different to what it would have been 10 years ago. We're allowing people to go and do stuff that, well, I would argue even say 3 or 4 years ago, people on the board would have cringed and thought, God, we can't do that. But we've got to allow people to go and do this stuff now and experiment and stuff, and almost give them the opportunity to feed that back to us. That's something that we certainly wouldn't have done 5+ years ago as well. So that just shows how fast things move on.
Yeah.
Again, we've got young people who come into the business now, and again, 5 years ago we'd sit in and say they expect a laptop and a phone on day one, but now what we're saying is, well, they expect access to AI on day one, or some sort of chatbot or some sort of element of that. So God, it worries me even just now we're talking about it, just how fast things have moved on recently. So
I feel like we both need to leave now and go and sort something out. But and actually, it probably feels like a good place to stop. I think that the AI conversation is something that's going to be taking a lot of our time. And people in your role and mine, I think it's something we're going to have to be. Well, it's not some. I'm not saying this like I'm some kind of crystal ball gazer. Yeah. It's a challenge that we're going to need to understand properly, and then make sure that we've got kind of the right guardrails in place for dealing with it. So David, look, it's been fantastic. Cool. Loads of great tips. I'm sure the audience will have got lots out of that. So I just like to thank you for your time. Appreciate you spending some time with us on a Friday afternoon.
No, that's great. No, thanks for having me on. It's been a nice little talk again, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Some fantastic insights. So David, thanks again for joining us. Cool. If you enjoyed this episode of CTO Insights, then make sure you catch all future episodes. You can subscribe here on YouTube by clicking the subscribe button that's down there somewhere, I think. And you can also find us in all good homes of podcasts and subscribe through your normal podcatcher, whatever you call it, the thing you listen to your podcast with. What do they call them? I don't know. I'll ask AI later. So, but for now, thanks for tuning in to CTO Insights. David, thanks for your time.
Thanks,
we'll see you all next time.